Okay, now let's move on to question number three for the Minitab question. Right. So, question number three, if you look at the screen, as part of an investigation to study the transaction cost of teller versus ATM, a bank has collected a random sample of 40 teller transaction costs and 50 ATM transaction costs. So, in this case, we know that we have 40 data for teller and 50 data related to ATM transaction costs. So in this case, we have two distribution. Okay, one is transaction teller transaction, another one is ATM transaction cost. And you need to perform a hypothesis test to determine if average value teller transaction cost is higher than ATM cost by more than 0.5. So this is basically the objective that you need to prove. All right, and this statement is actually the HA statement for your two sample T. Right. So to answer this question, okay, all right. So the first one, you need to list down the step of analysis. So if we refer to the review note, this one, okay, these are all the list of step that you need to proceed to answer question number three. So if you copy and paste this statement in your answer sheet, okay, the same thing, you will have ataupun get 3 marks. And now for number two, you need to give the result, the final result for every single step, okay, that you have listed down. So for example here, the first one, I'll state the objective, and the objective, you can get the answer from the question itself, okay. And then what is the HO and HE statement for two variance and two sample T. So this is just the same as the second question, but the second question, you have three distribution. Okay, thus you need to perform test for equivariance and one way ANOVA. So the same thing here, you have only two distribution, the teller transaction cost and ATM transaction cost. So you need to do two variants to compare whether the standard deviation or the variance between these two transaction costs, is it the same ataupun not the same. And the two sample T here is used to compare whether the average of teller transaction cost and ATM transaction cost, is it the same or higher than teller transaction higher than ATM by 0.5. Okay, all right. So one is for variance, one is for the average. Okay, so HO, again the same as previous question. HO means to say there is no difference. Okay, and HA is there is a difference. Okay, so no different in terms of variance, you are referring to HO for two variance. No different in terms of average, you are referring to HO for two sample T. So HA will be the opposite lah. Alright, the opposite statement. So how to perform two variance and how to perform two sample T. Okay, alright. I will show you later on. Alright, but before that, you need to first examine the stability test, normality test, and then you get into the two variants and also the two sample T. So we will be starting from here in Minitab. Alright, so stability test, let's say this is your data. Okay, you have 40 data, alright, for teller, and you have 50 data for ATM. So I just delete the remaining portions ni. Alright, okay. So for stability test again, you can go for run chart, you can go for individual chart, and also you can go for box plot lah. Alright, and all those things is actually stated in the review note. Okay, so I prefer to go for box plot because it is the simplest. Alright, so I just go to graph here and then box plot. Okay, since I have two distribution, so I need to go for the multiple Y. And in this particular case, every distribution is basically arranged in its own column. Teller has its own column. ATM also has its own column. So I just use multiple Y, simple. Alright, click OK. Select both into the graph variables and click OK. Then I will get this box plot. So again, we need to observe if there is any star symbol If there is no star symbol, meaning to say there is no outlier. So in this case, there is no outlier, and we can conclude that the data is stable. So the same thing, the next step, okay, the same as question number 2, I need to observe the normality of teller and ATM transaction cost data. So I use graph property plot, multiple, and then I select both teller and ATM and graph variables. Category variable, I just leave it blank because the data is being arranged in different column. It's not stacking in one same column. So I just use the graph variable, click OK, and I will get the result, the p-value, normality test p-value result for teller transaction cost and also ATM cost. So in this case, both p-value more than 0.05, meaning to say the data for teller and the data for ATM, okay, is normally distributed. The shape is a bell curve. Okay, all right. Then I proceed with stat, basic statistic, and two variances. Okay. So in this case, both samples are in one column. No, I need to change this into each sample is in its own column. Okay, because this is the arrangement of data given for this particular question. So click at sample number 1 box, then you're able to select teller and ATM into the sample 2 box. All right. And remember, since both of these distribution are normally distributed, so you need to go to the option and you need to check or click this use test and confidence interval based on normal distribution. Click OK and OK, then you will get your result. Okay, this is the one that you need to copy, graph, and paste it in your answer sheet. So you get a p-value less than 0.05, and again, okay, for if you look at this review note, two variance and two sample t you need to interpret. So the interpretation will be based on the p-value here. For any hypothesis tools, if the p-value is less than 0.05, okay, in general, we say there is a difference. So in this case, it is 0.01, which is less than 0.05. So we can conclude that the standard deviation of the teller transaction cost is not the same as ATM, standard deviation for ATM transaction cost. So that is the conclusion ataupun the interpretation from the two variant test. Okay, we are basically focused on the standard deviation or variance, whether it is the same or not the same. Okay, so if you conclude something like that, all right, you might get maybe for this particular case interpretation, okay, this one, maybe you can get 1 mark. Okay, but if you want to get more mark, okay, then you need to have something like, so what will be the way forward, and then that one will be based on your own thinking, the way forward, okay, to ensure that the standard deviation can be improved so that it will be the same for both, for example. Right, okay. Now the next step is the final step where you need to get the result for the two sample t. So step, okay, in this case you go to basic statistic, two sample t. So remember, two sample t is to compare the average transaction cost between teller and ATM. So I need to change this to each sample is in its own column, and then click at sample 1 box, then I'm able to select teller and ATM. So at the option, okay, this one you need to be careful, because in the question stated here, you need to determine whether the average value teller transaction cost is higher than ATM by 0.5. So this information need to be included in the option. Okay, hypothesis different is the 0.5. And higher than, you need to change this alternative hypothesis to higher than. Alright, okay. Click OK and click OK. Now you will get the result, the p-value, which is in this case more than 0.05. If it is more than 0.05, we conclude HO. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, any hypothesis tools, if the p-value is more than 0.05, you will be concluding HO. Less or equal to 0.05, then you select HA. So HO is this one, meaning to say, in this particular case, we can conclude there is not enough evidence to say that the average of teller transaction cost is higher than ATM transaction cost by $0.5. That is the basic interpretation lah. Okay, and if you want to get more mark to interpret on the two sample T, all right, this is my advice. You need to know how to use this statement and put it in a good sentences lah. Okay, all right. So how to use this statement? Okay, you can refer back to our inferential statistic module. All right. So that is how you answer question number 4. All right.